Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of From The Stump. I am joined by my co-host, Kelly, today.
Good day.
And Kelly, and thank you for being with us. We're going to get Kelly's insight on what we're going to be discussing and talking about. Thanks to everybody out there who's joining us. Appreciate you coming by and stopping in. What we're going to do today is we're going to recap some of the highlights from this season, some of our guests. I took some of the segments, mushed them together and took some 2 and 3 minute clips out and put them together of some points that they made that we talked about that I think are of interest and deserve to be talked about again. So are you ready to watch?
I'm excited.
Ready to watch. Okay, so everybody stick with us. We're going to queue up Mr. Dave Boyd. He was our first guest this season, and we're going to listen to what he had to say. We're going to come back and we're going to talk a little bit about those comments, and then we've got another few clips from some of our other guests that we're going to do the same thing with, so you know what's going on. So I wanted to ask you, back to kind of figuring out where your story came from and where you got to where you're at with cutting and your knowledge and stuff. What led you down the road to create a Sawmill school series? Like, when did that kind of come into your mind? How did that all kind of come about?
I think, it mostly came about because I've got such a good relationship with Norwood. It's just you buy that sawmill and all of a sudden, you've got this support structure and friends that you never knew you had. A lot of it came, from my participation on the Norwood Connect forum from the website, and there's a few of us that get on there and we'll swap stories, or somebody new comes on and they'll talk. Maybe they're having trouble getting a straight cut or whatever, and we'll kind of kick around some ideas, things for them to look at. So I think it kind of went from there.
I think we've kind of dropped off, Dave, like with all the new technology that's around and all the Facebook and the YouTube and all of that stuff. I don't really think that we're promoting that as much as we could, because that is such a good resource. And that's why I kind of want to touch on that for a second. That
Sure.
When you own a Norwood sawmill, and you get into that forum and you kind of get a rapport with the guys and you get to know who's who and all of that, the wealth of knowledge that's in there is astronomical compared to anywhere else you might go. Like, if you ask a question, you can have 100 years of cumulative knowledge working on it for you.
It's just in two guys.
Hey, I'm not trying.
You're most of the way there with me.
Give it to me on that bio we sent you, but I'm not sharing that, not unless you do.
Even now, I'll come up with something that'll puzzle me, or I'll come up with a solution to something that maybe other people have run into. I mean, I'll ask as many questions as I have answers for. It seems like, even still, and and sometimes somebody that's new, but they've hit it and figured it out before I have. So there's always that.
It took me a little while in the beginning when I first started cutting. Like, you get to this point where you think, "Oh, I'm good. I got this all figured out." And then as you're going and things start changing, and maybe you get into a different species of wood, and all of it, it's just not working the way it did, what you were cutting previously.
Right.
And you start to go, okay, maybe I don't have this all figured out. It's not as simple as just drop it on there, clamp it. There's different feed rates. All this starts to kind of float around and bubble up in your mind, right? So, yeah, I can understand the thoughts, I think, still from when I was starting and learning. And then I've come to realize that you're never going to be able to figure it all out. And so much of it is learned by doing, where you just kind of got to get it on there and get to it and make those mistakes. And, which brings me to something you wrote, and it kind of sat with me. Just give me a second here while I find it. You wrote here. Good judgment comes from experience
experience comes from bad judgment.
That's true.
That is some of the best words I've heard in a long time, buddy. I'm gonna file that one away because so true. So true.
As long as you don't get yourself hurt.
I wanted to kind of go off in a different area here because I want to pick your brain while I got you, because I'm as interested, I think, as anybody else on this topic. I want to talk to you a little bit and get your advice for, and I know this is a huge topic and we touched on it a bit when we did that pre-interview, but drying, when you first are cutting and you're drying, and let's talk about this from a new owner's perspective. So let's say the guy just got his sawmill, he's made his first, he's cut his, let's say 2,000 board feet. He's cut his first 2,000 board feet. And now he's got to think about, okay, I got to sticker this stuff. I got to put it somewhere. I know I'm not going to use it right away. What advice do you have for that guy?
Well, the advice is to have a plan and be set up. In fact, I did a video on cutting stickers and blocking for stacking wood. And you might cut a few boards just, because you want to see what they're going to look like. But when you start cutting on a more serious basis, the first thing is to take some of your trashiest wood and cut maybe some 4x4s for blocking to get it up off the ground, and then some maybe 1 inch square, or anywhere between 3/4 inch and 1 inch square stickers, which are spacers that go between the layers of wood for air circulation. Because if you don't do that, you're just cutting firewood, and it may be even too rotten for that in a few years, depending on the species. So you got to have a plan and know what you're going to do with it.
Hey everybody, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed watching that. Dave is a master with answers. There's more knowledge in there than I think anybody will ever be able to pull out. But did you enjoyed that?
I love Dave. He is a wealth of knowledge there.
He is.
Yeah.
He is. So a couple of things I wanted to, why I picked those spots that I picked was something, and I'm going to talk on this again, guys, because I can't say it enough. And as a new owner in the market, or as somebody, even as an experienced owner, I believe, and this comes from my heart, I truly believe that our support program is second to none.
The resources that we have available with the Sawmill TV and the forum, it really takes the pressure off of trying to learn it all yourself.
It does, and experienced staff.
Oh,
and we,
exactly. and then the call center, absolutely.
Because we have we have dedicated areas for most of those topics to be positioned, so they're getting to the right person to get the answer. You know what I mean? So everybody just keep that in mind. You can always phone us if you have questions. I'll be happy to answer. Kelly will be happy to answer. Whoever answers the phone is going to get you where you need to be to get that fixed out. The forum is an amazing place, and I'd like to see more guys use it. So if you're out there and you've been thinking about it, take the minute, sign up. Pop in there and just look at some of the conversation that's going on. I'll tell you, those guys are a wealth of knowledge. If you have any questions and you can't get through to the office, or it's the weekend or evening or whatever, that they seem to always be on there.
Exactly. That is always available.
Yeah, and there's always new stuff popping up. I go in there all the time, and I'm like, oh, they're talking about this and they're talking about that.
Exactly.
And I'm learning stuff too. Which kind of brings me to that next comment there. When we talk about experience and mistakes.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's funny. It's funny, but that's a really, really true thing that Dave said. You got to make the mistake in order. I mean, myself, I have to make the mistake in order to learn how to do it right. That's just how it works 90% of the time.
Sad,
and then I know, okay, don't do that again.
Yeah.
Right. Or that's how you figure out how to do it right.
Yeah.
So just something to keep in mind, guys, that don't knock yourself down. Don't beat yourself up if you're working through something and you're having trouble with cuts, and it's not just performing the way that you figured it would. It's just something. Sometimes it's just the day. Sometimes it's just the log. It's nothing to do with your skill level. But you want to blame yourself, and everybody beats themselves up.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
just something else to keep in mind.
Yeah.
And then his final words there, and this is super important, and this isn't just with drawing wood, but Dave said, have a plan.
Have a plan.
Have a plan. Have a plan before you even start for the day. Know what you're trying to get out of that, or what you want from those logs. Do you want 1-inch stuff? Do you want 2-inch stuff? And then when you do cut it, where are you going to put it?
Where are you drying it?
What's going to happen?
Exactly.
Know all of that before you get everything going, and everything will move a lot smoother.
Yeah.
Because you're not stopping. Oh, how do I do that? Oh, I got to figure this out. Oh, I got to do that. It just makes the operation flow.
It's like you're checking things off instead of making it.
Yeah, you're just moving through the process, right?
Yeah.
You've already got the plan. It just works a lot better, and everything seems to come together a lot easier when you're doing that. So have a plan. Know that we're here to support you if you got questions, and we'll move forward from there. So again, if you got any questions, anybody that with what we're talking about, put them in the stream, put them in the feed. We're always going to get back to you, let you know we love it. I love seeing it. Kelly's getting involved. She loves seeing it now too. So please send them our way, and we'll be happy to talk to you. Give us a thumbs up. Let us know where you're watching from. And I've got some other stuff I'm going to share with you when we get more towards the end here. But we're going to move into our next video, and this was a guest that we had a little later in the season. I'm moving around the time frames here with what we did with guys, but I want to do Logan Whitmer next. And he was a fellow that we talked to from Woodsmith magazine. And again, young guy, crazy talent. And you guys are going to see this in some of the videos that he's done. There's some of the pictures that are in the interview that we did of his craftsmanship. And again, some comments there, and we'll come back after this. And we'll review that with you and talk about why I picked those moments. All right, so stick with us.
Hey, so I got a whole ton of questions to ask you. I know we probably won't get to all of them, but what I want to start with, just to kind of introduce you to everybody beyond what I just did there, can you give me a little bit about where this all started for you? How did you start? Where did your interests in working with wood come from?
So it's funny because this is a question we get a lot when we're doing interviews for the TV show, stuff like that. And my interest in woodworking was kind of a roundabout way. I've always been a maker, right? Always loved building stuff. When I was a kid, my favorite toys were Legos and erector sets, right? And I always was working with my dad doing like basement remodels, building houses, stuff like that. So once I got into high school, into a shop, I kind of ran a little wild because it's like, oh, hey, there's a whole woodworking shop, and there's something more to woodworking than building a basement, just framing out a basement and finishing it. So it was that was kind of the real apex of, or the point where it all came together was when I first got into a wood shop in high school, and I had some fantastic teachers in high school that kind of allowed me just basically free reign of the shop. And here I am, 20 years later, at a woodworking magazine.
Logan, how is that walnut fur holding up to, let's just say, let's just use the word kid punishment? How,
well, it's funny because I've used this excuse with my wife for the longest time that I have not built us a kitchen table because we have 2 young kids.
Yeah.
And I don't want to shed a tear every time a ding or something happens.
Right.
But when I answer this question, when people write into the magazine or they email us or whatever, my answer is always the same. And it's an answer I just need to start listening to, is every ding, every dent is a part of that pieces of furniture's history, right? It's the memories that you're making around that poker table, around that dining table, around that bed, whatever it is. It's part of the history of it. And once you get over the fact that all that, 12 hours of sanding and finishing you just did is dinged, and realize that, you're just saturating that piece of furniture with your own personal history, then you don't worry about it. I have been sawing, I've been harvesting lumber and sawing lumber for a long time, since I was 12. This, like I said, this pecan tree from this tool tote back here, it was a tree that my grandpa had planted when they built their house. and it just got too close to the power lines, and it was being taken down.
It's such an amazing thing when you see the simplicity of getting that board out of the tree, out of the log. Like it's like this like little switch goes off inside your brain when you see that happen, and you go, I can do that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of those things, you know, I feel like there is two different types of sawing you can do, right? Dimensional lumber for building houses, but then there's also the type of stuff that I do, which is been a lot of like urban salvage. So it's trees that are being taken down for one reason or another, often from an urban setting, but then it's stuff I'm using to build furniture with, and it's very cool to watch that tree that somebody grew up with that tree in their front yard, and now I'm able to use it to build a poker table or build a bed or what have you. It's an amazing thing.
I get to talk to a lot of guys about that, individual owners that buy not for business, just for their own purposes, like yourself. Mm-hmm. And it could be a second or a third generation home that they're in. And like you said, their grandfather planted that tree. It's too close to the power line. They have a sawmill. They take it down. They have all these memories with somebody with this tree. And then they'll take it just like what you're doing, and they'll turn it into a beautiful piece of whatever that's going to be around forever. And it's like that memory never goes away. You've preserved it, you've kept it and made it something that's going to stay there, And I love that. I'm in love with that idea. And you're right on the money. There's kind of two lanes to the machine. There's building and fabrication and construction, where you're doing all your dimensions like you're talking about. And then there's woodworking and fine craftsmanship, live edge, and all of these specialty things that not everybody's doing.
Yeah, and it's an interesting marketing concept if you're selling lumber as well, because I've sold some of the stuff I've milled in the past, and that's always been something that I've enjoyed, is knowing this. I mean, each tree is individual, right? You're never going to cut two walnut trees that look exactly the same. They might be close, but they're never going to be exactly the same. Each tree grew in its own unique situation, in its own unique way. So as I've sold lumber in the past and continue to sell lumber, I can tell you where every tree grew. I can tell you where every tree that I've cut or milled is harvested from. And it's something that a lot of people that come out to buy lumber, they appreciate it. They like knowing that, hey, these 4 pieces of ash I bought came from this public park in Des Moines. That's super cool to them. They like to see the reused aspect of it instead of being chopped up for firewood, which is completely valid. Obviously, bigger is always better, but I think once you get over a certain size, the price goes up significantly. So then you're looking at a dedicated slabbing mill. And that wasn't what I wanted. I wanted something that could be portable. Yep. I wanted something that wasn't going to break the bank. And honestly, the biggest reason why the Norwood mill appealed to me was the fact that it could grow with me.
Right.
So, I mean, everybody wants a Ferrari right off the bat. They want full hydraulics, They're like, heck yeah, I want full hydraulics. I don't want to have to crank that log up there. But I know that that's down the road. I can do that down the road. So I can add the hydraulic power bank. You can. And you know what? I really prefer first-time mill owners to start with a manual machine. And then put the power on it, because the learning curve that you go through in that manual process just makes you so much better as a sawyer when you get the power options. Yeah, well, I think it's interesting because you mentioned that when we talked a few weeks ago. You really get that tactile feel. What that blade feels like as it's going through the wood when it's fresh. What it sounds like. Yeah. If that log will roll on the bunks. Can I turn that 90 degrees to make another cut easily, or is it going to get snagged up somewhere? It's a lot. I don't want to say it's a lot slower process, but it's a more involved process. because you have all that tactile feel. You have the hands-on with the log. You have the hands-on with the saw head. You know everything and how it's reacting.
Yeah.
Hey, so there we are. We're back. We watched that with Logan.
Wow.
There was so much in that interview. Like, I could have just replayed the whole thing. Logan's all full of
He's so full of passion.
good information. Oh, and he's passionate. Like, he's like, he's like me. He's like, let's go, let's do it. We're doing this, we're doing that, and he just and I love that because that's we're all. I think everybody that's watching, I think we're probably all that way. I know you're that way.
Yeah,
that's why you're sitting. That's why you're sitting here.
But even where he knows where all the logs come from, like in reclaiming that lumber, that just adds to the value of the piece.
And that's actually, and that's why she's here. That's perfect. So that's part of the reason that we wanted to talk about that I wanted to talk about that. I picked it. It is so cool. And anybody that has a mill, and all of our owners that are with us, that are watching, or if you're rewatching this, to have that piece of that tree that you planted with your grandfather, right? The tree that you planted with your grandfather gets too big. Let's use Logan's story. It's near the power line. It's got to come down. You hung out with Grandpa at the tree. Mm-hmm. There's memories there. There's something solid and tangible that you can touch.
Right.
You cut it down. You make something out of it that you're going to have forever. And every time you look at it, that memory is with you. And it's attached to that piece of furniture. Exactly. And, I've made this and I've done this, and I've got all kinds of stories that are the same way that Logan just explained, where, you've got a memory with this and it matters. So that's the personal side of it for me, guys. But I also think that there's a commercial side that Logan gently touched on there. And if you can get some of these pieces, like say you're in an urban area and you can get some of those logs that came out of, say, that local park, because they're getting too big and they're getting dangerous.
Exactly.
Don't just cut them all up and stick them somewhere and make 2x4s and 2x6s out of them. Cut them into a big cant, label them where they were, when they were cut, even put some history into the growth rings and advertise them as that, because I promise that there's going to be some woodworkers that, and if you could imagine, if you have pictures of that coming down and, right from the point of when it came down to the piece of furniture that was made, you could say, here it is, Mr. or whatever you're doing,
that's the story.
But isn't that a cool thing?
Carries,
what a cool thing to have with a piece of furniture.
Exactly.
Or if you're a furniture builder, you can say, here's what I can offer you, Mr. Furniture Builder. Here's where this tree came from. Here's the history, and then they can take it to whatever they want. So that's one of the things that I wanted to touch on with what Logan was saying there. And the other part of what I got from what he was saying, and we never talked about it in the interview, was what an amazing thing if you can get somebody younger involved in this trade. Okay. We're losing so much, he said tactful feel.
Exactly.
We're losing our hands-on abilities with a lot of our young folks. And if you have one of these machines and you can get them introduced to this at a young age, and they can start learning all the stuff that we've had to pick up on as adults, imagine what they'll be able to do when they get to our age with that knowledge.
Exactly.
So, I wanted to share that and just let everybody know that this, if it's done safely and supervised, what a wonderful thing to get some of the youth involved in and get them learning and knowing that they can do it themselves, that, they can take it right from the backyard and build themselves a home. It doesn't have to come out of Home Depot or Lowe's, or I don't know if I'm allowed to say those on here or not. We're saying it anyway.
We just did.
So that they can do it themselves. So that was the next thing I wanted to share. And then what else did I want to take from that? Growing, the last point that he had that I left on there was our machines can grow with you. And I can't say it enough. We're the only brand on the market that you can buy a base machine that fits your mill or your style. Yeah. Right. Yeah. In your budget. And
your environment.
Maybe you're not sure about what it is and you're kind of wondering, can I do this? And then when you get it, you go, yeah, I can do this. You did.
You did it. Same thing. Exactly.
Now you're like, I want hydraulics.
Now I'm like, let's go. More. Yeah.
So that.
Built to grow, built to go.
There you go. So I think that's I think that's something to take away from what we talked about with Logan. And I hope we get to talk to him
Oh,
again.
I definitely would love to see
I'd
him
like to
back
get
on the stream
I'd like
again.
to get Logan on here again
Yeah.
and pick his brain
Yeah.
some more. So okay, we've got and we're getting some questions coming in, guys. Thank you very much. Give us some thumbs up. Let us know what you want to talk about. If you got any questions, shoot them out. I'm going to come to them. We got one more clip we're going to watch here with Greg Rose, and we'll discuss it. And then once we're finished that, we'll talk about some of these questions that are coming through. Okay, so stick with us. We're going to watch Greg here, and we'll be back in a second.
Just to drill into that a little deeper, so I'm clear what you're saying there. So you're using a 9-degree hook angle,
Yes.
and then what are you using for a pitch? What's your spacing? Are you still 7/8 on that?
Yep.
And you're still running a 1 1/4, right? You haven't gone beyond that.
Yep. And the set's about 0.26.
Okay.
So
Okay,
you know,
so I'm learning something new. I have never talked to anybody that's using that blade that you're talking about right there, and you'll nose that right into the hardest piece of wood you can find.
yeah. And last fall, I cut a shagbark hickory. It was 35-inch diameter tree. It had sat for a year and a half before I got to the log. Typically, I would probably tell somebody no on a job like that, but knowing that, you know, I got over there and I had 2 different style bands, and the one style I had was a 7-degree, more aggressive tooth, and they all were sharp. And I started with the 7-degree, and they were so aggressive for the size of the mill, they were almost a little too aggressive.
Right.
So it was chattering a lot and shaking the mill a lot.
Yeah.
So to cut down on a lot of that, I put a 9-degree on, which is set for cutting more dense wood and just a slow speed on the feed wheel, and you can get some nice straight cuts out of those, even full of knots too. Another big way would be to take fresh end cuts off your logs before you cut them, because a lot of time iron will soak in the wood and it will stain it. So you can have wood such as oak, maple, you know, and they'll have like that blue purple stain, and you'll see it if you get to it. You know, every cut you make on the sawmill, if you don't hit metal, sweep it off. Look for some of that staining. In ash, you'll get a black stain. Sometimes it doesn't turn purple. So every wood reacts differently to the metal. Like cedar, you won't get much at all. So, you know, there's a lot of variables with that too.
Really valuable advice that you got right there. Yeah.
Use your friend. I got some friends, Bradley Tree, around the area, and local guys in the tree care companies that have the equipment, and they will help me out if I need it. So
that's
can't be
well. That's
out at some points.
Connections, right? I mean, and you know, and last week the week before when we were talking with Dave, you know, for the guys that are not, you know, necessarily in business like yourself, but they're looking for some of these big logs to cut. Getting in touch with the local guys that are doing that is probably the best thing they could do, because they want to get rid of that stuff they're cutting, a lot of them.
They do, yeah, and it's catching on. And you know, if you don't hook up with the tree companies and actually help them out, because there's value to this stuff, even though the commercial markets won't pay for it. You know, there's a value to everything, and a lot of times I work out, you know, pallet price or something at least with the tree companies, and they're happy. You know, if they can make a little something here and there. Yeah. Otherwise, it could be your next competition. You know,
well, that's just it. Like nothing's free. So, you know, you want to keep it, you know, in a line if you can, and keep everybody, you know, a little bit of the piece, and everyone's happy, and try and keep your own corner in the market, right?
That's right. Yeah. One thing I learned actually on this job, you know, because you're still learning things every day. Never think you know it all.
Hey, so we're back there after watching Greg. Again, just wisdom all the way around with these guys. I was so thrilled to have these guys on, and the chance to talk with them and pick their brains and
see what they're doing,
and get, you know, it's nice to speak with somebody else that's doing it and get their take on it.
Exactly.
You know, and part of why I wanted to do this review was, you know, as much as, you know, we can offer advice and we can give guidelines and stuff, when it comes down to it, you know, and I'll kind of circle back to blades here, you know, when you talk about blades and what blade's best at cutting what, and pitch and hook angle and all of this stuff, they're all guidelines. They're all guidelines.
Absolutely.
Like what Greg was talking about there, I would never even think about using that blade, but here he is, he's using it, and it's working amazing for him. So always be open to to new ideas, and
Yeah.
and don't be afraid to try something different, because maybe it'll work better. There's no way to know unless you try, right?
Exactly. Region, species, it's all different.
Yeah, so I guess kind of what to take away from that is, don't, decide for yourself. We can give you recommendations as pros, and we can, try and get you pointed in the right direction. But once it starts working, don't be afraid to branch off a little bit and say, I wonder if this will work better. I wonder if that'll work better. So, take that away from what Greg had to say about that. I loved what he had to say about cutting the end of the log a little bit. Like if you've had stuff sitting, give that end a little nip and take a look and see if there's any stains in there.
Right.
Because not everybody has a metal detector.
Or the one that can penetrate that deep.
Yeah, like you can't always see that. So that was a really good tip to do, just to eyeball those logs. And again, you kind of, I think, a lot of the time, and sometimes there's mystery meat in there and you can't tell. There's just no way around it.
Exactly.
But it came out of a lawn. So there's, you've got logs that you're pretty suspecting that there's something in there.
The chances are pretty high.
The odds are pretty good. So that was a good tip, everybody. So take that with you. Hopefully you can use it. And, it's important that when you're cutting your log lengths, that you leave enough room to do this. Right?
Right.
So
having a plan.
Yeah, having a plan, right? There you go.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I always tell guys, if you want 8s, it's 8.6. If you want 10s, it's 10.6. If you want 12s, it's 12.6. This might override that a little bit, because if you're going to be milling this later and you think there might be something in it, maybe you better leave another couple inches. Because otherwise, if you start nipping the ends, you'll get short enough that you won't match the bunks.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other
that's a whole
other pickle. We don't want to go down. We won't go down that rabbit hole. No. So we'll skip over that now. Final thing on that, not final. I got one more comment after this, of course, but local services. Really important, guys.
Great resource.
You know what? I know some people are probably a little apprehensive. Oh, I don't want to phone. And give them a call. Because I'll tell you, they'll be probably pretty happy to work with you. They're in the business just the same as you are.
Yep.
And they're probably happy to talk to somebody else in the business and get another avenue that they can move their product, and you can work with them. I think Greg nailed it right on the head when he said, everything has a value. You got to realize that. Don't expect it for free. Right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You have to. And I can't put any prices on that, but just realize that everybody,
there's a give and take.
Everybody can work together and probably come out ahead, and
Exactly.
Synergy. That's the word, right?
Exactly.
Synergy. So that'll keep everything moving properly for you there. And I ended it with what Greg said there, and it was, don't ever think you know it all.
So
don't ever think that. And I started that with Dave. I started that with Dave. Where I said in the beginning, I was like, oh yeah, I got this all figured out. No, I don't. And now I can tell you, I never think I've got it all figured out. I just have some ideas that might make it work better. Is how I say that.
And that's an important approach to keep keep you humble.
But that goes back to the that phrase that he said there, where you have to make some mistakes, right? You can't get better unless you do it wrong. But I mean, some people will argue that. I'm sure I'm going to get some feedback on that, but that's my own personal experience of it. So
some learn from watching others make mistakes, and that's fantastic. But me myself, I like to make my own.
Yeah, well, I don't know if we like to do it, but it happens, and all you can do is work with it. It's what makes us who we are. So, so again, thanks everybody. I wanted to touch base. We got a couple of questions that came in here. Kelly, do you want to are you comfortable tackling that?
How to tighten the ceramics?
Yeah, Jonathan.
Yeah. Okay. We ran that in,
and he's afraid of. So let me read it. Let me read it, and then you answer. Okay. So Jonathan wrote in. He said, "How do I tighten the ceramics? I'm afraid of them breaking." And that's true. Not so much the round ones, but the square ones.
The square ones can
do you want to talk about that? How you set them up when you're doing it?
Okay, and I'm gonna pretty much just reference our video that we ran doing the checks and stuff. Like, you run them a little tighter than I used to, but now I cut on the weekend and that worked out really well.
Okay, well, you talk. Tell them how you set it up.
So we ran it nice and loose off of adjusting it. I've just set it to the blade, but the only real way you could probably crack the circle ones is if you over tighten those set screws. I think as long as you're applying the right amount of pressure to set them in there, you should run without getting sparks or the process of cracking them.
Yeah, so I think maybe more what Jonathan might be asking is, and you're right on with the round ceramic. So it's pretty tough to break those guys. You can tighten them up pretty good. Worst thing that's going to happen, and I kind of preached on this a little bit in the one video, is when you're tightening up those little 5/16 or number 10s, you can't be reefing on the end of it. It's just a little wee screw. You're going to break it off in there, so it can only be so tight.
Right.
The problem that comes in is on the little square one at the back. Because that set bolt's pressing right against the ceramic, you can only go so tight.
Exactly.
If you go too tight, you know what happens? Crack, done.
Gone.
Here's a little trick that I do. I don't know, maybe I haven't talked about this yet. So that's, Jonathan, thank you. I use a little bit of clear silicone on that square ceramic.
Really?
Yeah.
Just to give.
I put it in there with a little bit of clear silicone, and I tighten the set screw up once I've got it where I want it, which is about a 1/4 inch out of the block and an 1/8 behind the blade. Okay. And the reason for that is because I can tighten it up and I don't have to go so tight that I'm worried about cracking it, because the worst that's going to happen is it's just going to push that back against the aluminum housing of the block. Okay. Now without the silicone, it just rattles itself all the way out and into the sawdust, and you never see that ceramic again.
Yeah.
I don't care how hard you look. I've looked and looked and looked. And when they fall out, they're gone. I don't know where they go. I think something eats them.
They disappear.
But if you use silicone, it just gets stuck in the block and it can't go anywhere.
Okay.
That's just my little hack on fixing that, Jonathan. So hopefully that helps you out.
Please, right.
So
more.
thanks for the question.
Yeah.
Now, Russell has asked, how do you cut around the pith? So what we're asking there, guys, is what he's talking about is the growth ring in the tree, the center of the tree, when he says the pith, or what I call the heart of the tree. Okay, so I'm going to draw a circle here. I'm going to hold it up and maybe it'll make sense. So if you can see that, can you guys see that? Yeah, you can see that. See that circle? That little circle in the middle is the heart, and that square that would be around that heart, we're going to cut that. That would either end up 4x4 or 5x5. Okay. And the reason for that is because those are just two numbers that are a safe number. Usually you can get out of the heart, and it's a material that's useful for something. Pallet industry uses it. A lot of, Dave pointed it. A lot of guys just use it for their own stacking and stickering, because you got to have them anyway. So why not use the crappy part of the log?
Yeah.
So I'll draw some other lines on here. So your best lumber is always on either side of the heart. Okay. So there's a couple of ways that you can cut it. All right. So that would be, can we see that? That would be the easiest way to do it. Okay. Would be to come right down and take those boards off the one side, take the boards off the other side, and then take your shallow boards off of the other two. And then you can create some sort of consistent numbers, and you'll have to edge those boards, but that's going to give you as much material as possible out of what you're cutting. And we're drawing circles. We all know trees aren't perfect cylinders,
Never.
but the hearts can be off center. So sometimes you got to come in further, and that'd actually be another good topic. That'd be a good topic to talk about. We should do that with Dave. Make a note of that.
Write down in the comments if you'd like to see that.
So that's one cutting method there that you can use, Russell. And there's a couple of different ones. And you know what I'm going to refer to on that? And maybe we can we'll try and post something to the link with a link to showing some of those different patterns that you can pick. So you can start making some choices, because there's a number of different ways that you can go about doing it. But the main thing is to keep a 4x4 or a 5x5 out of that heart piece. And then all your better material is going to be all the way around it. Okay. All what they call your clear. So hopefully that answers that. Now, a couple of, I guess, maybe housekeeping and information for everybody. So this is the end of our summer series. This is 8 episodes is what we plan to do, and we're all done. We're wrapping it up here today, and we're going to do a separate fall series. And I'd like to hear what you all would like to see. So please, I'm asking you can put it in the comments. That's one way to do it. You can email myself or Kelly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and it's either Trevor or Kelly, and then it's at norwoodsawmills.com. All right, so maybe I don't know if our guys in the background, Daniel, if you're up there, maybe you can flip that up for everybody so they can get a visual of it, so they know the proper email addresses there that we can talk about. Now, if you'd like to be a guest on an upcoming episode, what I would like you to do is send me an email and give me a short video of your setup, and then give me some information about what you do and what you'd like to talk about and what you think that we could present that you have for other sawyers that are out there that we might be able to learn from. Okay. We've got some new ideas for some new guests for the next season.
Yep.
In the fall.
Stay tuned.
So stay tuned for that. We're not going to lay all that out there right away, but I'm sure there'll be some dribs and drabs come out from our guys in the media department. I'll point a finger over here.
And our Facebook always keeps updates on what we're doing. So please don't be afraid to like, share, and subscribe over there.
Yeah. See how well she did that? That's fantastic. I'm so glad you're here.
Well, thank you again for having me.
Yeah, so it's been a ton of fun, everybody. Thank you very much for sticking with us. I appreciate everything that you've done. Please, if you have those ideas or thoughts, or you'd like to move forward or be a guest on the show, I'm super welcome to receiving all your thoughts and tips, and positive, negative. Let us know what topics you would like to talk about. I'd like to go in the direction where you want us to, and if I have to do some research myself, even better, because I love learning as we're doing this as well. So thanks a lot, everybody. It's been a lot of fun. We'll talk to you soon.